was growing up, it was probably a lot like a lot of other kids of Asian immigrant parents, that the focus was very much on school, doing well, that my job in the family was to get good marks and their job was to provide a good home. And certainly there was this direction you get pushed towards where you're just assumed to go into university, post-secondary education, and the degrees that you're likely to get would be to be a doctor, a lawyer, or an engineer. In addition to the grades, though, I was very involved in a lot of the other activities, so you can classify me basically as your regular geek, nerd kind of person. You know, I was captain of the chess club, I was editor of the yearbook, I was involved in, played in the band, and involved in all sorts of science and math type clubs. And it was just what I considered to be what it meant to be a successful student. And my parents always emphasized that my job was to be a good student, their job was to give me a good home and take care of things, and post-secondary education was just a given. That was something I would do. In university, I chose to study engineering, so electrical engineering. And I think it partly has to do with that stereotype. I was good at math, good at science. Physics was my favorite subject. I love knowing how the world worked just by using equations. So engineering seemed like a really good fit, as well as my dad was a civil structural engineer, so it made a lot of sense to do that. And I have to say, I really enjoyed working as an electrical computer engineer because of the design work. I really enjoyed creating things. I really liked working with abstract concepts and trying to make this piece of software work. And that was where I spent a good 9 years of my time in the industry. I have always been interested in the ongoings of the world. Like, I always had a lot of extracurricular activities, and one of them brought me across a Canadian Lieutenant General named Romeo Dallaire. He had been in Rwanda during the Rwandan genocide there as a peacekeeper. And that story really shook me, because growing up in high school and back in 1994, when the Rwanda genocide was happening, I had thought that, you know, well, humanity's good, we've moved on from this whole war and Holocaust thing. And in the meantime, this piece of story was happening. And so it occurred to me that this is something I wanted to explore more. And so as I did more reading, as I took more of an interest in what was happening in the world, I felt that my work as a software engineer was not giving me the opportunity to explore that more fully and do something about it. So I, after a lot of preparation and thought, I quit my job, which was a big step, because I was doing something I'd never done before, which was to go into business for myself. And probably the most difficult part was to tell my parents, because that was definitely not something they would have approved of. And in fact, I made sure to quit the job and wait 2 weeks before telling my parents about it, so that they couldn't change my mind. It would have been too late. And of course, they want the best for me. They wanted me to have a safe, secure career and move up in the world in a way that they couldn't, because they came and they had to adapt to the culture. But what I realized was that part of what makes my parents who they are the challenges that they went through coming to this country. And I got a pretty easy life because of them. And yet, I hadn't had my big challenge, which was to find my own way, to find my own path. And telling my parents this, I thought they would be really pissed off because of all of the effort and energy we had put into the post-secondary education. It's like, why give up a great career? And when I explained to them that this was my challenge, this was to build my character and to find my own way, they actually seemed very supportive of it. And so I looked into, well, what if I started a business to raise money for a camera? And that began a research into this idea of being a documentary filmmaker, which I realized was such a beautiful fit between the technical part, which I love. I love working with computers and tech gear, but and also the creative element where you're trying to tell stories about what some of the significant issues that are happening in the world and helping other people to understand that, become aware of it, and potentially change how people approach things. And that's when I started Hidden Story Productions, which is my video production company, where I do a lot of advocacy work through video storytelling. One of the benefits of ranging out and searching out in life for things to do is that you get to experience things that you never thought you would have. So the camera has taken me to places that I never would have imagined. I have gone to Kathmandu in Nepal, where I was working with a group of Nepalese youth that were actively trying to educate people about the water sanitation issues there. So I spent a month in Kathmandu and learning about the Nepalese culture and living there. It has taken me to into people's homes, where I have shot stories about people who live in wheelchairs and really tried to understand how they live and what it's like to live like that. And most recently, the big project that I've been working on is a documentary about Treaty 7 territory, about the bigger story of Aboriginal and settler relationships and how we came to have many of the problems we have now, and what would be the possibilities for a new treaty or a new relationship between the settlers and the First Nations. So there's a documentary called Elder in the Making, where I spent about a month traveling around in different parts of Treaty 7 territory, visiting powwows, camping out at the Grassland National Park, and really getting to see the world with my Blackfoot friend Cowboy. I guess where I'm headed is trying to better understand where humanity has come from, where we are now, and where we are headed. Because I really do feel that we are headed for some exciting territory, but also some very dangerous territory when you look at the exploitation of the environment, when you look at the economic divide between the extremely poor and the extremely rich, that these are all things that we need to understand how to address at a systemic level. And part of my role as a storyteller or filmmaker is to help people better understand the world in which they live, and hopefully to be able to act in a way that supports a more compassionate and just society. It was absolutely worth trying to explore and find my own way. Of course, there was always the challenge of, well, maybe next year I'm not going to be able to make as much money, or maybe there's all this uncertainty in terms of I could still fail big. But I've reinterpreted those to be, that's exciting. It's not something we should be afraid of, because I think people are meant to be challenged, and that is how life can be so much more fulfilling when you push yourself and you realize, wow, I can actually succeed, and if I don't, then I can learn from that and continue forward from it. And mostly there is just no price that you can place on seeking something that is fulfilling, seeking something where you feel that you are contributing in some large measure to the world. I guess I should say I had probably, like many idealistic youth, that I want to make a difference in this world, right? And partway through you can get caught up in the grind of things and into the job and family, and you sort of lose sight of that aspect of life. But if anything, I've kind of come back around to that, in a more mature way. How would we actually make a difference in the world? And in pursuing that, you find that that is the most awesome thing you can do in life.